you know, going back to 2023, there was a lot of uncertainty for the Packers organization and Packer fans. Like, Aaron Rodgers is gone, and it's going to be Jordan Love's opportunity. He's either going to sink or he's going to swim, and you're going to find out soon enough. And, it was one of those things where is the cycle just going to continue or are the Packers going to take a step back? Well, they certainly didn't take a step back in 2023. Jordan Love showed out well for himself, and as a result, he got a massive contract extension. Like, he got paid. Good job, Jordan Love. Which means that the Packers were making a statement at that point saying, we think he's the guy. We believe in him. He is our franchise quarterback. Which now kind of takes it from just a curiosity of what can he be to a reality of he's the one. He better be the guy kind of deal, right? Especially when you've put that type of price tag associated with his name and his talents. So going into 2024, what were we going to see? Was Jordan Love going to show that 2023 was just the start of something or a bit of an aberration? And I think it was kind of a mixed bag, admittedly, right? You had the opening loss to the Eagles down in Brazil where Jordan Love got hurt. Never an ideal thing when you've just paid a quarterback a massive contract that the first thing he does is he gets hurt in the opening game. So he misses the next couple of games, and then his backup, Malik Willis, leads the Packers to victory in both of those outings. And you're like, uh-oh, right? Not the best thing, although it gives you some confidence to say, hey, the backup quarterback that we have is at least competent enough that you could put him in a spot and you can win some games with him. That's a good place to be for the Packers, right? But you're really more concerned about you want Jordan Love to have the ability of availability and you want him to ball out. And he didn't really ball out this year. Now for the Packers, this is still a pretty good season. They were 6-3 heading into the bye week. And then they won their next three, which put them in a pretty powerful spot. And frankly, I think if you're the Packers, you wish you played in another division because it's crazy how well in the regular season Green Bay did against everybody else. Everybody else, except the NFC North. That opening week matchup against the Eagles that they lost was the only loss outside of the NFC North in 2024. They finished 11-6, but they were 1-5 in their division. And honestly, for the Packers, they're lucky it was even that, right? Because they're a block field goal away from being winless in the NFC North. They damn near got beat by the Bears twice. For Packers fans, that has to be embarrassing. Not because it's a rivalry, because it hasn't been in decades, right? It just isn't. It's been a one-sided domination. It's like some sadomasochistic BDSM type of shit. That's how frequent the domination has been by the Packers over the Bears. But not so much in 2024. So it was like, okay, this is a Packers team that if they didn't play in the division, what would their record have been, even with Jordan Love not playing super spectacular football? Fair question, right? So they made it into the playoffs, 11-win team, and admittedly they kind of laid a bit of an egg in the wild card round against the eventual Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. So it's on the one hand, it was a good season. On the other hand, it's how good of a season was it really? And does it open more concerns than anything else as you get ready to start thinking about 2025? Good news for this team, though. You had Josh Jacobs come in as a kind of bigger money free agent signing at running back, and he had over 1,600 total yards, 16 touchdowns. Not much more you could ask for him, right? In the year of the running back, if you will, you had some big notable running backs put up some monster years. Josh Jacobs was firmly in that mix. You had Tucker Kraft emerge as their featured tight end. You could argue maybe even their top weapon in the passing game. That's good to see. Jaden Reed kind of became their number one wide receiver by default, although they didn't have any receivers go over 1,000 yards. Jordan Love certainly didn't live up to the big contract. Guys are going to have bad years. 2024 was not a great year for Jordan Love by any stretch of the imagination. It just wasn't, right? Any Packers fans trying to minimize that, shit, dog. It happens. You probably don't want it to happen again, but don't kid yourself. Don't lie. And back to the receiving corps piece, it was interesting to me when you go back to late in the year, and even the commentators during the game were talking about Christian Watson and how you already had some issues here. Do you want to take him out and keep him healthy for the playoffs? And of course, almost immediately after that, he tears up his knee. So we talk about that playoff loss. Now the offense didn't really show up. Like it kind of was their own doing in some respects, right? So the offense had some highlights there with Josh Jacobs, Tucker Kraft, and Jaden Reed. Solid. Don't get me wrong, but the offense wasn't spectacular. Jordan Love certainly was not. The defense certainly saw some sizable improvements in 2024, right? They were borderline elite. They were fifth in the league in yards allowed the sixth fewest points in the league. Free agent signing Xavier McKinney was great. He had 8 interceptions. And I wonder, with what you saw this previous offseason with the Packers, where they did spend some money in free agency, if this is a representative of a small shift in the philosophy of this organization, that you can't just exclusively draft and retain your own talent and think that you're going to consistently compete for the Super Bowl. It's just not a thing. It's just not a thing. And they wasted so much of the Aaron Rodgers era with that kind of stubborn philosophy that worked to a point, but it didn't work enough to the point enough of the time, right? So if it represents a bit of a seismic change in terms of the Packers won't go like hog wild in free agency, but they will spend some money in some targeted spots and some targeted players, like that represents a philosophical improvement for this organization that some Packers fans should take stock in for the future. And now you get into this offseason where they've got about 45 million or so right now in cap space. Opportunity to selectively spend again on a couple of roster fillers, but more importantly, guys that could come in and make an impact. That's a good place for the Packers to be, especially since they gave Jordan Love the big contract. To still have that much cap space is a nice spot. In terms of free agents they have, you got Eric Stokes, Josh Myers, Isaiah McDuffie. They could re-sign all 3 of them if they want. They could let all 3 of them go if they want. Probably a mix of they'll keep some and let some go. But again, this is a good Packers team, but they've got to figure out a way to go from being a good team to a great team. Part of that comes with Jordan Love playing better. Part of that comes with fine-tuning the supporting cast. As we head into this offseason, what do I see as kind of the biggest needs for them? I think number 1 is on the offensive side of the ball, and it's at wide receiver. They need a real number 1. Jaden Reed is good. I think you're asking a lot if you want him to be your wide receiver 1. Christian Watson is a guy that when he plays, he certainly makes a difference and an impact. But the problem is that whole thing. When he plays, how much can you really count on him, right? And is he really like a number 1 type of wide receiver? I don't know about that. But if you could go in and you bring in somebody, draft somebody that can be a legit number 1, and now you put Christian Watson as your 2 and Jaden Reed as your slot guy, now all of a sudden you're talking about a really impressive receiving group, especially when you layer in Tucker Kraft. I think that has to be the number 1 target here in this offseason. Number 2, though, in a very close number 2. And if somebody said number 1, I would totally get it, even with as much as their defense improved in 2024. I think they're soft as hell at corner. Jair is not what he once was. I think Eric Stokes has not been great by any stretch of the imagination. That's a position they frankly could invest multiple high picks on in this year's draft, and probably should. And then I look at the defense and I look at edge rusher. You've got Rashawn Gary there. He's developed into a nice edge rusher, but I think you're still waiting for Lucas Van Ness to really make any type of real impact whatsoever. And with the type of defense that you run there, you need depth. You need to be able to bring guys in waves, and it opens up the possibilities for what you do in your pass rush packages. They need more edge rushing talent. And then I also look at offensive guard and say they could use another starter there. There's not a team with a ton of needs. I think of it more so as the needs that they have are pretty pronounced. So you've got to do something this offseason to address them. And if you do, the Packers could be right back in this spot in 2025, potentially leading the way in this division. But if they don't, it could be, hovering around 10 wins or so and not really a factor when it comes to the playoffs.